special GRM seminar. Today we have two guests from Africa, from Zambia. Let me introduce them. Prof.Webby Kalikiti from the History Department of the University of Zambia, and Prof.Ackim Zulu from the School of Engineering. So now you can imagine this combination is exactly like ours. So from the social sciences and from natural sciences. Okay, now please take some seats. So actually, and also Agora 先生、4月からGS の先生になったナタニエル・アゴラ先生も来ていただきます。アゴラ先生はfrom Kenya. So those guests, Professors Kalikiti and Professor Zulu from Zambia. So Zambia, have you been to Zambia? No? Son-san, have you been to Zambia? No? So the Zambia is located in southern Africa, the center of southern Africa. So the not all, but many African countries suffered very violent conflicts even after the end of the Cold War. But Zambia has been a peaceful country. It's a very much peaceful country, thanks to the peaceful nature of Zambian people and also good governance. And at the same time, Zambia is very much quite strategically important country, very rich in mineral resources, and also food production is also expanding. And which mineral resource is important? Is quite world famous. Some product from Zambia. Which one? Maybe some of the students should know all about it. The major product, export commodity of Zambia.
Actually, without that product, we would not even have the electricity, or we would not connect our computers here.
Copper? Yeah.
Yes.
Copper.
Yes, copper.
Copper. The major industry. So now I think the GDP growth rate of Zambia is more than 5%.
About 6.5.
6.5%. Yes, is expanding. And also there's a very much robust demand for the Zambian African commodities in Asia. So many Asian countries, including Japan, are now paying very close attention to this country, Zambia. And the Chinese influence is expanding, and also they receive a lot of foreign direct investment from many countries. It is increasingly important. The Asian investment from Asian countries is becoming more and more important. So the Zambia is quite a big country. How big is it? It's bigger than Japan.
Yeah, many times. 750,000 square kilometers.
Yeah. So the economy is expanding. It's quite a huge, big country. So infrastructure is quite critically important. Some road infrastructure, electricity and water supplies. So the Zambia and University of Zambia is very much quite a natural partner for the GRM program in Toshisha University. So we asking them to establish some kind of program, some field work or internship or something for the GRM students. And we are going to sign MOU with the University of Zambia. It's quite soon. So maybe we may have students from Zambia University maybe next year. Okay. So thank you very much for coming to Toshisha University and to professors. And today they are going to make a presentation about quite basic historical geography and energy infrastructure in Zambia. And also they are going to show you give you some information about the University of Zambia as well. Okay. So about 40 or 45 minutes presentation, followed by discussion.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Ackim Zulu. That's the name you see down here. My colleague as Dr. Webby Kalikiti. That's the first name we see here. We are very pleased to be here to discuss or to share with you some knowledge concerning the historical geography and the energy infrastructure of Zambia. So, as indicated, it's going to be a basic presentation. Expected that you take it as informal as possible. We will try to be as relaxed as possible. We're going to share this presentation. We'll begin with, first of all, with my colleague, who's from the social sciences, is going to tell you first of all about the historical geography of Zambia in the first part. Then in the second part, I'm going to talk about the energy infrastructure of Zambia, since I'm connected with the Department of Electrical Engineering. So that's the part that's sort of the page that. Okay, so that's the structure for what I'm indicating here. So the first part is covered by my colleague, Webby Kalikiti, and I'm going to talk about this part there. Then in addition to that, because there's interest that we're going to have exchange of students, maybe some will come from the University of Zambia, they come to this place, or some of you will also come to Zambia. We just give a little introduction of just how the University of Zambia looks like, with a couple of photographs of how it looks like. So that is going to be a short presentation. So as I indicated earlier on, I want you to just take it as an informal talk, but we have prepared some PowerPoint slides just to guide our talk, and I expect that some of this will remain as part of the archive so you can refer to it. But the idea is that you try to listen as much as possible to the speaker, because that's where most of the information is going to be taken. So with those introductory remarks, I'm going to ask my colleague, Webby Kalikiti, to just deal with the first part here. I'll be sitting next to the computer just to scroll or to pace up how the presentation is going to go.
Thank you. I think I'll be introduced by Professor Prof.Ackim. I'm a Zambian, but I studied a bit of Southeast Asia. My PhD is on labor and rubber plantations in Vietnam. So my fieldwork was in Vietnam. Since then, I've been connected with Asia. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the history and the geography of Zambia. I'll first start by saying that at the time Zambia got independence in 1964, it was a middle-income country with the fastest growing economy in the third world. In fact, our gross domestic product was said to be higher than that of South Korea. And therefore, we were a prosperous country. The economy was based on copper production. But by 1990, the economy had declined to the level of one of the most highly indebted countries in Africa. So from 64, when we were a middle-income country, we sank to one of the poorest countries in the world. Since 1991, economic prospects have significantly improved. And that improvement is partly tied to the political change that occurred in 1991 when we reverted back to multipartyism, and also it came about due to the liberalization of the economy, because in between, from 1972 to 1991, we became a one-party state, and the economy was nationalized. So the government took over everything, and that is what contributed to the economic decline. presently, we are now ranked as a lower middle-income country. So we've risen slightly. We have an annual economic growth rate of 6%, which is now hoped to increase to 7% this year, which I hope it does. And Zambia's economy is largely centered on mining, with copper being the chief economic sector. We contribute 3.3% of the world's copper production, but we are also second in terms of production of cobalt, which is one of the strategic raw materials used especially in the military industry. But the country also produces coal, manganese. There is a lot of uranium, which is being mined but not refined. And we have also a lot of precious minerals that I'll look at later. But also there is development in agriculture as well as tourism. So these are the key economic sectors of the country. Now, in terms of the size, Zambia is about 750,000 square kilometers, which makes it as big as France and Belgium combined, but its population is just about 13 million people. So in terms of geographical size, the country is very, very big, but the population is very, very small, which gives Zambia an average of only about 12 to 15 inhabitants per square kilometer. Now, I can compare that to other countries of the world. In terms of the distribution of the land area, 9,000 square kilometers of Zambia is made up of water resources. The other important geographical feature about the Zambia is the fact that it is surrounded by 8 countries. We have no direct access to the sea, and therefore all our commerce has to be conducted through other countries, which means that we have to have good relations with our neighbors if we are to continue existing as a country. For example, when there were conflicts in Zimbabwe before its independence, the southern route was completely closed off. We could not export or import anything through Zimbabwe and South Africa. And similarly, when there were conflicts in Angola on the west, the railway line through Angola was cut off. That route was shut. So the only alternative that remained for us was to export our goods through the north into Tanzania to the port of Dar es Salaam on the Indian Ocean, a distance of about 2,000 kilometers. And since when that happened, there was no significant means of transportation along that road. The government was forced to ask China to help us construct a railway line as well as develop a road link to the port of Dar es Salaam. In terms of physical features, Zambia is mostly a high plateau. It lies at between 1,000 and 1,000 meters above sea level. with a few mountain ranges which rise up to 2,000 meters, and that's the highest, Mount Sunzu, which is near Lake Tanganyika. But the country also has a number of valleys or low-lying parts of the country, which are mostly along our major rivers. And as you can see on the map, these are the Wapula, which ultimately connects with the River Congo, which is one of the longest rivers in Africa. We have the Rwangwa, which creates the Rwangwa Valley. We have the Kafue River, which, as Ackim talk about, provides a basis for one of the largest hydroelectric schemes in Zambia. And then we have the Zambezi River, which is probably one of the most well-known rivers in Africa. The Zambezi River, on which lies the Victoria Falls, Kariba Dam, which was some years back one of the largest man-made lakes in the world, because it emerged out of the creation of Kariba Dam. But the same Zambezi River has again created another large lake, Kaborabasa, in Mozambique, further south, where there is again another major hydroelectric power station. And these are some of the indications of the Zambezi River. For example, when you see it here, it is passing through an escarpment. And the river, as you can see, is narrow with a sharp sides on both sides. And just this side is the dam wall. Then the same river, in the western part of the country, where it flows through a plain, becomes much, much larger. You can see the transformation, and you can see it's much greener, the river is much wider. Then here it's passing through the valley and the escarpment in the south. And then you have the Victoria Falls, one of the most famous falls in the world, which is again on the Zambezi River. But even in the north of the country, you have a waterfall. So most of the rivers in Zambia cannot be used for transportation because they have rapids and waterfalls, and therefore they've never been used for transportation of goods because of this major constraint. But this provides a potential for hydroelectric production. The country is also endowed with a number of lakes, and here I just have a few photos of one of the lakes that I refer to, Lake Kariba, which is a man-made lake, because it was formed by the creation of Kariba Dam. And Lake Kariba sits between Zambia and Zimbabwe. This is Zambian side. When you look across, it's Zimbabwe. And this is just one of the islands on the lake, because when the water began to rise, most of the land was submerged, but the higher points remained above water. And there are some animals that were stranded when the dam was constructed in the early 1950s and still live on some of these islands. But in terms of climate, Zambia, because of its high elevation, is neither very cold nor very hot, with an average temperature at about this time to August of 15 to 26 degrees. The highest temperatures are 35 degrees and above, but these temperatures are only in the low-lying valleys, the valleys that I mentioned. We have three main seasons: the cool and dry season, the hot and dry season, and the warm and wet season. I mean that our rain is between December and April each year. After April, the country is completely dry. The rainfall in Zambia is determined by two major factors. The first is the intertropical convergence zone, which is a high pressure belt, which affects rainfall in the sense that when it moves from the equator southwards, it brings with it more rain in Zambia. And when it moves back northwards, it leaves the southern parts of the country dry. And when the ICZ moves further south, it brings usually too much rain in an area that does not receive a lot of rain. But the rainfall is also affected by easterly and southeasterly winds, which I don't know if we can get to the map. Yeah, it's the map of Zambia. Just to quickly. Yeah, when the southeasterly winds that blow from the east and the southeasterly, and these are usually winds that come from the Indian Ocean. So when these blow inland, they bring some moisture. But because Zambia is right in the center of Africa, by the time these winds reach the southern parts of the country, they are usually drier, and therefore they bring very little amounts of rain. So this part of Zambia is comparatively drier than the northern part of it. In terms of vegetation, Zambia is essentially savanna land. We have savanna forest lands as well as savanna grasslands. And the main forest types are the mopane and the miombo. The miombo covers large parts of the country, whereas the mopane is mostly found in the southern drier parts of the country and valleys. We have some photographs of forest land. This is open woodland, savanna in the south of the country, not very far from Victoria Falls. And as you can see, these areas are home to game. You have a giraffe there because the trees are open, and therefore animals are able to easily move about and also feed on the grass. And then this used to be a miombo forest land, but because of deforestation caused by charcoal burning, it has been cleared, but you can still see on the hillsides original miombo trees which have been left. Agricultural potential. Agriculture is mostly based on livestock keeping, agricultural cultivation, and fishing. Fish is mostly from the lakes, swamps, and rivers such as Zambezi and the Kafue. Livestock, mostly cattle, are kept only in certain parts of the country because Zambia has a problem of the tsetse fly. But the potential for cattle keeping, given the size of the country, is enormous. It is yet to be tapped. In terms of crops, anything can grow in Zambia, just anything. The country is self-sufficient in wheat production. We produce a lot of maize or corn, we grow rice, coffee, sugarcane, sunflower, almost anything can grow in Zambia. There are big sugar plantations, but the potential still remains extremely enormous. You can move on. Now, in terms of history, I think I'm running out of time. Most of our history is not written, and therefore the first written history started with the Portuguese and the Arabs, and it's mostly from the 18th century. I think we can move on. Briefly, the original inhabitants of what is Zambia were hunter-gatherers. But between 1400 and 1800, the Bantu migrants began moving in from what is now Congo, DR. And in the 19th century, the last group of migrants moved into Zambia from the south, the Zulu and the Soto, because of Shaka Zulu's wars. I'm sure some of you have watched movies on Shaka Zulu. In the 1890s, we became a British colony under the British South Africa Company. In 1924, the British government took over the administration of the territory from the British South Africa Company. They are the ones who started a copper-driven economy which developed in the late 1920s, providing labor to the Africans and creating one of the largest conglomerations of urban areas in Africa, making Zambia one of the highly urbanized countries in the continent, because 45% of Zambians now live in towns, mostly along the line of rail, and that is high for Africa. I think you can move on. We became independent, as I said, in 1924. I think, let us, Now, what is important is that in 1991, Zambia reverted back to the multi-party political system, and the economy was liberalized. And since then, as a country, we've experienced economic growth that I refer to. So economic prospects at the moment have significantly improved. There is enormous potential in all areas of economic development, even though poverty levels still remain high at 60% of the Zambians. The political situation in the country is transitional because we are not yet democratic despite being a multi-party state. But we are one of the most stable countries in Central Southern Africa. We've never had conflict, and it is our hope that we'll continue to be having of peace in the future, that our economy will continue to grow. So I think those are the salient points that I can point out now. I've gone beyond my allotted time. I think Dr. Zulu will pick up from there. I hope you've been able to pick a few points on that, but we'll leave the details with Professor Miller that you can look at later.
Thank you very much. It's the end of the I want to sit, I'll stand around.
All right.
Is this the point?
Yeah.
So don't worry, we're going to have an interaction at the end of the presentation. So just allow me to deal with the second part, and then we can have interaction. And I'm suggesting that maybe we do the introduction to UNZA after the discussion, because it's quite separate from what we are doing right now. So let me just check if how to use this pointer. Okay, thanks very much. So my colleague Alvin talked about, introduced you to what Zambia is. I'm interested in talking about this part which deals with the energy infrastructure. And this is going to be approached in two ways. First of all, I'm going to talk about what we use energy for. Then also I'm going to talk about now what is the infrastructure that's supporting the use of energy. It's a point you must appreciate that depending on where you are, the uses of energy are different. So that's a point you see and how it's reflected in respect to Zambia. Can I just go back? So in relation to Zambia, or as Zambia is concerned, the main uses of energy, in terms of the way I put it here, is in relation to the amounts. So the bigger amounts of energy, they are used mainly for industrial and commercial applications. And in industrial, it's mainly mining. So my colleague talked about copper mining, which is the biggest industry. So that's where most of the energy is used. But some of it also goes for processing industry, and also part of it for agriculture. But there are 13 million people in Zambia, so part of the energy also goes to domestic use. But if domestic use, and this is the contrast, especially if you're coming from Japan, or you're coming from Europe, you will see that the way we use energy there is differently. Mainly it's for cooking and hot heating. And then to a small extent, it's lighting when it's dark. There's already a lot of light in Zambia, but it's only when you use lighting during the night. And also for entertainment, like computers and so on. This one here I've indicated that it's optional, because we are in the tropics. And these are special tropics because Zambia is in what's known as hinterland. We're not near the coast. So the weather there, or the climate is such that it's not humid. So there's actually no requirement for air conditioning. So if you see air conditioning in Zambia, it's just actually a superficial requirement. So it's actually possible to live in Zambia even without shelter throughout the year. And you can see people living like that, those who are destitute on the roads without having any shelter. Okay. So with those uses, then it means that how is this energy harnessed for the uses that I'm talking about? You see that, because a large part of the population in Zambia is can indicate it to be not well off. So most of it comes from the natural resources, which we call the wood fuel. Wood fuel is from the trees which he was talking about, which grow into the savannas. So it's the one which is processed from wood fuel, mainly for cooking and heating. Then now, the other part, in terms of the amount, it comes from petroleum. And I'm going to talk about where this comes from. And then the other form is the one which is in the form of electricity. I also mentioned how we process this electricity. So can we move down there? So now coming to talk about wood fuel, or in terms of, talking about the consumption figures. These are the ones which are collected by the National Statistics Office in 2007. You see that firewood, direct firewood, you cut a tree and then you get energy from it by burning it. You can see that it constitutes about 60% of how we use energy in Zambia. And if you process the tree and make charcoal out of it, you can see that it constitutes about 15. So if you add 15 and 68, you can see how much firewood is used for energy. Then petroleum, that's the one which is used in the mines, constitutes only about 11%. And the one to do with electricity, which is usually the urbanized area, and mainly for cooking and heating, that's the one which accounts for 5%. There's a rapid use of also coal, which is what I put there as 1% there. Okay. So this is where the largest consumption of energy comes from, which is the wood fuel. So in terms of, it's shown in the map where these forests are occurring, but in terms of statistics, these savanna woodlands, in terms of relative terms, you can see that it accounts for 65%. Then there are actually small closed forests, which are 5%. Then the grasslands are about nearly 30%. But the wood fuel is used as in two forms: either direct burning, where you can even see a flame, and you are using it for cooking or heating, or you can process the wood in terms of charcoal, and then you can use it even indoors. And these are the two I've just mentioned in there. So the process, as you come from the forest to the household, it starts with someone going into the grassland or the woodland to cut the tree down, just like this gentleman is doing there, usually using simple tools like an axe. And so once you clear the forest, this is the effect of what remains to your land. There was a forest, and then you can see that. Then this wood is collected. At this point here, it can be used in both ways. First of all, it can be sold the way it is, or delivered, that's for heating, or it can be processed into a kiln to make charcoal. And this slide is going to show an this is the processed charcoal, and this is how it's done. It's put in bags. They're not special, but they are just simple bags, and that's how it's processed. In its form, so can I just go back there? In this form, before it's packed, this is how the hoops look like. It's black. And then from these centers where it's collected, even the means of transportation could be easy. Like this person here has got a bicycle. You have different uses of bicycles here. I saw a few bicycles around there. But you can see here that, well, it can take up, our bicycles can take up loads up to this amount. Okay, and when it's applied now for use, this is the apparatus which produces heat for cooking. So you start it up like this one there, and you can see here, this is the pot here, so food is being cooked in there. That's where it's ended up. So most of the use, when people require use of energy in Zambia at the peasant level, this is where they stop. Other than that, for things like heating and only other things, this comes directly from the sun. Right? So the next large consignment of use of energy has to do with petroleum. Mainly petroleum is because of transportation. And I think I'm going to talk about that. I can see that 53% of the use of petroleum is for transportation. But some mining processes also require direct use of the petroleum products, and that's where the 27% comes from. And then there are a few uses in the households. For example, here I would get 6%. This is because some households don't have electricity, so they use a petroleum product called kerosene for lighting up and so on. And that's an example of where this goes in there. So this is about the distribution that you get from there. So can I move down there? So this petroleum, I've talked about petroleum in the use like this. However, we don't have petroleum itself. So what we do is we actually just import, mainly from the Middle East. And in fact, because we import, the refinery we have is not a full refinery. We import what is known as spiked crude oil. It has already been processed, then mixed back, then shipped. Then we just do what is known as distillation, just to separate them back to petrol, gasoline, and so on and so on. So there are two infrastructure which do this. First of all is the pipeline that takes this petroleum product from the port in another country, that's Dar es Salaam, on the coast of Tanzania. So this pipeline is about 2,000 kilometers, as can you see there. It runs all the way up to the middle of Zambia. Then from there, as well as the refinery, which is the distillation refinery. So that creates the second infrastructure, which is known as the Indeni Petroleum Refinery. So this was commissioned in 1973, and this is the capacity to which it can process this amount of fuel. Can I move down there? So in terms of the map, which we are shown here, I've just shown the eastern side of Africa, because you can see, you can see that's the Indian Ocean, which you are able to identify. That's Tanzania. So it's the pipeline runs from Dar es Salaam through Tanzania across into a large part of Zambia to come to a place called Ndola, which is about in the middle of the country. So once you are there, once the products are separated into fuel, gasoline, kerosene, and so on, they are now distributed to all areas of Zambia in there. So I'll talk about a little bit of that later on down there, because these are a bit of technical details. I'll go into them, but since this is going to remain, if you can just see, that's the indication that when it comes from Dar es Salaam, first of all, it has to be stored in Ndola, then separated, then distributed. And these are the capacities for the infrastructure of what we have for it. Okay, so that's the Ndola refinery plant, which is, we think, is a crucial plant in Zambia. I indicated that it was commissioned in 1973, but from that time, it's been degrading in terms of maintenance and so on. At one point, it was so critical such that the decision was made in 2006 to actually do what is known as rehabilitation, but this required capital injection. So these are the things which we are facing up to now, that this plant requires continuous maintenance, recapitalization, and making it also modern. So the last part now has to do with the electricity, which I think most of you in this part of the area are concerned with. So I'll talk about where it comes from. The potential for how you can generate electricity in Zambia is very high, and that's what I'm indicating. Because from the map that you show there, there's a lot of sun, so we can do a lot of solar, but there are also a lot of rivers and lakes, so we can do a lot of hydro. So these are the main sources that we find in there, and this is where we get our electricity. However, you expect that maybe we'll get a lot of it from the sun, but it's not the case. We can actually get most of it from the hydro plants. So it's going to lead me to talk about where the hydro plants are. So this is a network, or this is the arrangement of rivers. All those blue lines, which look like veins and so on there, this is indicating to you the major rivers there. And in addition to that, because the map is just too small, there are also small ones which you can put on the map. Put them all there, it was going to look blue. That's how it's going. But in any case, the major ones which you're familiar with is Lake Kariba here, which was artificially made from on the Zambezi River so that you can generate power. But there's also Kafue River here, which has been dammed to make the Kafue Gold Power Station, which I'll talk about later on. And then on the Victoria Falls, those of you who, if you happen to come to Zambia, you probably come as tourists, and one of the tourist attractions you come to see is the Victoria Falls, but there's a small power station there as well. So these are the three main ones which generate power. Then there are also a few ones there. The next slide shows the capacity later on down, not this slide, but later down on there. But this is just to indicate the kind of, in terms of capacity in megawatts, which you can generate as power. The demand for the users that we use it for, that's cooking, lighting, and so on, is around between 1,000 and 2,000, and it's been growing between 2,000 and now, but also the capacity hasn't been growing at the same point there. So we expect that there will be a requirement to expand the infrastructure and exploit our resources here on there. So can I have down there? This now is talking about the major power stations where this is electricity generated from the hydro plants. So the biggest one is Kafue Gorge, of nearly 1,000 megawatts. The next one is the Kariba North Bank, which is on the Zambezi River near Victoria Falls, and the actual Victoria Falls itself is about 100 megawatts. Then there are small hydro, very small hydro plants and small plants, which accounts for about 24 megawatts. Can I move down there? So because these power stations have been located very far away from the cities where the power is being used, this power has to be transmitted, so we use transmission lines. So the highest voltage at which this transmission takes place is at 330 kilovolts, and that network is about 2,000 kilometers. So the next level, we also have this one about 500 kilometers, and then these are levels and so on. And in between these networks, you find a lot of high voltage substations and national control centers. So in effect, that would what would constitute as the electricity infrastructure in addition to the power stations for Zambia. Okay. In terms of the layout, I've just told you about the kilometers in which they run. It's actually not a network which is going throughout the whole country. You can see a red line here. It's centered around where there is urbanization and where there are industries. So it starts from Kariba, then goes to Livingstone, passes through Lusaka, then goes to the Copper Belt. Copper Belt is a region where copper mining is being mined. So these red lines are the ones which are showing the 330 kV transmission lines. Nowadays, in the last 10 years, it's moving all the way up to here because that's the new area where copper mining is being mined. So that's where they're going. Then now we are interconnecting to our neighbors like Zimbabwe, Botswana, so the interconnectors go down there, and now there's a new line which is going all the way to Tanzania and connecting with the East Africa. There's already one interconnection to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been in existence for a long time. Okay, so this now is just going to be like the conclusion to what I've just discussed right now. But the things to do with the wood fuel are enormous, and I've avoided to talk about them right now because they are the ones which have resulted in deforestation, this is a big issue, and it will take a lot of time to talk about it. But in terms of petroleum, it's a worldwide issue, even here as well. The same issues we deal with to do with petroleum are the same ones we'll be dealing with here. The volatility of the Middle East, because that's where oil comes from, I think this also affects us in the same way. But in terms of what we can fully control, are the things to do with the electricity, because of the enormous potential. And I think this is where we should be paying a lot of attention if we're going to do this development. So we need to fully develop our solar system, our solar energy system, and also our hydro potential. So there will be requirement to do a lot of investment in this area so that we can have more generation plants, especially exploiting the forms of one another's mini and micro hydro systems, because the capital requirements for developing these are much lower compared to the big projects compared to this. So that's the end of my discussion, and it's at this point where I think my colleague is also going to stand up now. You can refer to the earlier presentation where he was introducing Zambia, and you can also refer to the later presentation where I was talking about the energy infrastructure to just find out furthermore or make comments. Those who are familiar with it, we are happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor, maybe you can control the.
So maybe some discussion,
right?
Before having discussion, maybe I think in order for you to have a clearer image of the audience, maybe quick self-introduction.
Right.
Nice. Okay. So just quick self-introduction. Your research topic, and if you don't mind, maybe in case of ryugakusei, your country of origin. So just a quick self-introduction.
Okay. Just a moment. Yeah. Do you mind if I just take some photos of anyone who's minding as this is going on? Okay, that's it.
Should I begin? Nice to meet you. My name is Mari Takatsuka from Hiroshima, and my research topic is how the poor people in Philippines found the value of education, but I shift to how the child labor access to the public education sector and how the NGO helped them to go back to the public schools. And I'm doing job hunting this year now, and I'm interested in electronic power company, especially in KEPCO, Kansai Electronic Power Corporation. So thank you for having those presentations, and I really appreciate it.
Just you can keep us sitting down.
Sorry.
Yes. Nice to meet you. My name is Fei Fei Song. I'm a Chinese, and the topic of my research is Chinese business in Africa. And I went to Zimbabwe last year. I wanted to go to Zambia, but I didn't have a visa.
What happened?
I went to the border of Zambia, but I didn't get a visa.
Next time, contact me. I will get you.
If I have a chance, I'd like to go to Zambia this year. Thank you.
Yeah, I should get in touch.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. I'm Kenta Doi. I'm from Kyotanabe campus. I belong to the electrical engineering department. The topic of my research is plasma physics and nuclear fusion.
Right.
Yeah, it's a new way to generate electricity.
That's right. You saw that I didn't talk about that. Somehow we are prevented to to develop nuclear power, but we have uranium. You have uranium in Zambia. Oh, you
No, I still mine the copper ore. It comes with uranium.
Oh, it comes
So they are stockpiling it because there's no policy yet on how to handle it. So it's being stockpiled.
So the back row.
Nice to meet you all. I am Salam from Palestine.
My research interest is in renewable energy and in particular the rural electrification and off-grid renewable energy.
Right. So you saw in my presentation, it was very big, but you see there's what's known as a rural electrification program. It's a big project in Zambia. It's running for many years. It's trying to exploit solar power development.
Yeah, I saw the slide and it was very interesting, and I wanted to know more because I had read about there was a PhD thesis in Kenya about off-grid networking, but I want to see this in a larger scale in other different rural areas.
Hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Alex from France, and I'm studying engineering. And for now, I'm at the same lab at Doshisha University, working on plasma.
Nice to meet you. My name is Silupya. I come from Kyoto Tanabe campus. I belong to plasma physics laboratory. I study LED light emitting diode. And this year, I just studying this.
Actually, we are going to visit Kyoto Tanabe campus tomorrow. So is it possible for you to show them some campus? Maybe at 3 o'clock.
We meet you.
Okay. So that's the three of them. The three of them from that campus.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's what it is.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Awesome.
Very nice to meet you. My name is Oscar Gomez. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the laboratory of Professor Mine. Nowadays I'm doing a research which is a little bit different. It's on human security and the disaster that happened in Silupya 2 years ago. But my major background was chemical engineering and environmental studies, so I really enjoyed your talk. I was born in Colombia.
Right. Which how long have you been working on this project? How long have you been working on the research?
2 years.
2 years.
A year and a half. I was
Right.
supposed to finish by the end of October. Yes.
Right. Okay. Wish you all the best. Right.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Sho Kanazawa from Shizuoka. I'm a student, sophomore student at Faculty of Letters. I'm major on philosophy, but I'm interested in Africa.
Right.
Nice to meet you, professors. I'm Marietta Ketani, and I will be a PhD student from April in Doshisha GS studies, global studies. And then my major is my topic is migrant in the Republic of Mali, and then the relative relationship related to the poverty problem and also the natural resource problem.
Right.
Thank you. No.
Ça va?
Ça va.
Ça va?
Oui, yes.
じゃあ一回後ろ。
My name is Sakura Takemoto, and my major is information culture. I came from Kyoto Tanabe campus, of those. I'm the fourth next year, and I'm only just interested in this lecture, so I came here.
My name is Ruslan Dachkov. I'm from Kyrgyzstan. I study in Doshisha in master's degree. My topic's name the role of Kyrgyz Republic in cooperation in Central Asia through trade and investment. Nice to meet you.
Kyrgyzstan is also like Zambia. It's landlocked.
Yeah. That's okay. Right.
Thank you. My name is Masayoshi Kurimoto. I'm from Nagoya. I'm auditor. I'm not English, but today is thank you for good lecture.
Thank you. You say Norway?
Nagoya.
From Zambia.
No, you are clear. We have understood what you said about. So, thanks.
Nice to meet you. My name is Nazuna Nakao. My research topic is about whale hunting all over the world. I'm especially interested in North Atlantic area whale hunting, but I'm also interested in environmental problems all over the world.
Right.
Thank you for the lecture.
Yes, we see the connection.
Nice to meet you. My name is Hakuga Tabuchi. I came from Fukuoka. My thesis is about coffee trading in the world. So I'm interested in Africa, and I went to Tanzania last year for 3 weeks. Thank you very much.
So you remember you talked about anything can grow in Zambia. Coffee is one of them which is being grown in Zambia. That's a direct connection.
Thank you for the lecture today. That was very interesting. My name is Toshie Inui. I belong to Global Studies, and I've just finished my master's program this month, and I will be the doctoral program student from next month. And my supervisor is Mine Sensei, and my research will be the relationship between the drinking water and infectious disease in Rwanda.
That's interesting. Public health.
Okay, now you can see the big diversity of topics.
Very interesting.
And actually, as he said, Webby, Professor Kalikiti, he studies plantation labor in Vietnam. Okay, he is African, Zambian, but studying Asia. And he took a PhD from SOAS, the University of London. And also he once studied in France. And also, Professor Zulu, you took PhD from
Yes,
University of Manchester.
No, actually from BCIS. It's in England, but the University of Newcastle. Newcastle. Yes. So, yes, but I studied, like most of you are studying masters, I studied my masters in Edinburgh, that's in Scotland. So I'm familiar with that area rather than the south of England. Right.
Okay, we go global. So now we have a free discussion. Okay, so you can raise your hands and you can ask any questions. Okay, guest.
From my friend Naito Sensei, the director of this faculty, he told me it's really hard to control the level of difference between solar power plant and wind power plant or hydros. How do you control them in Zambia?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, you're right. In fact, I've avoided to talk about wind as a resource of renewable energy. It's because it's a resource which we think is not significant for developing power as an energy source. The average airflow from the natural wind is less than 2 meters per second. And according to technological recommendation now, it's believed that the wind speed must be about 3 meters per second for it to work with the current technology. So the issue you are indicating are not the issues we are investigating, because we don't have hybrid power plants where we have solar and wind being combined. So if you have solar power plants, they are just typically solar power plants. But you know the problem associated with that is that the capacity is small. So and this is why even when you are developing our solar applications, the applications are only for small loads, very small loads, like lighting, entertainment, and so on. When it comes to things like heating and cooking, you have to resort to additional use like
no solar power plants.
No, what we have solar panels.
So they just for
a single panel, few.
House or a building.
I thought you can have like big
No,
Yeah.
plants.
Yeah, no, actually, but you are right. Because that's in the next, I think he's talking about the renewable energy development, rural electrification plan. This is what's going to come now in the next plans. They are starting this year because now the bids have been opened up by the government so that we can develop solar plants to the size of up to 1 megawatts, 2 megawatts. So his interest is now when it's going to be applied. Yeah. So right now, when we are using solar, it's only for very small, less than 1 kilowatt or up to 1 kilowatt, and this will be just for individual units. So you see them more in small clinics which are in rural areas, chiefs palaces, where they are accessing those things.
I've seen your farm. The countries are washed with rivers.
Oh, yeah. No, the mini hydros. Talk about
Yes,
the mini hydros.
and so small hydro power plants. I think what is the sort of unexplored potential for the country?
Right.
Because I saw rivers.
Yes, exactly. So that's the combination.
Yeah, there's the map where we have rivers. It's just all blue.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. That's what it is. That's the one.
No, there's only one which has a mini hydro.
Oh yeah, okay, so it's okay, yeah, so it's this one. Okay, that's right. Yes. Okay,
go ahead.
Okay. So the big ones, the three ones I mentioned are the ones we find here, Aripa, Kakue, and the Victoria. The rest of these red ones here are mainly hydro. So they are just under, they are megawatts, but not in comparable sizes. But in addition to that, you can see smaller blue ones there. These are the mini hydro ones. Again, I think there's a statistic in the presentation where I'm indicating that the electrification of Zambia is only 22%. So we need to move it. The target is actually going to the 60s. So
the potential is there.
The potential is there. The potential is there. So how we're going to do this is by developing these small mini hydros, even for small around the river power plants, where it's possible we can make a dam, then we can have a water head which we can utilize. Right.
Like here there is one that is under development, Kabompo. Then one has just become operational in the northern part of the country. And that's the idea. Because the potential, as I say, is so big. It's just that we've been sleeping. We're now waking up. And the idea that we don't have enough electricity. So we have to tap every available.
But you may not even need to actually be on the main power transmission lines, so they could be independent.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, but so I appreciate your question, and that's in the developed world. That's the problem they're dealing with in how to do a hybrid between wind and so that those are technical issues which are being researched.
But what is also an important fact about energy is that since we are interconnected all over South Africa, what happens is that whenever there's a deficit in any of the countries, power comes from any of the sources. Because Congo has the Inga hydroelectric power, which is one of the biggest in Africa, and which also can be increased fourfold. So practically, when there's a shortfall here, we draw power from South Africa, we can draw power from the Congo DR. We are connected now to East Africa through Namibia. So that the entire region under SADC is integrated in terms of power production.
Yeah, the African Development Bank is working on interlinking all those areas up with you.
And how about the role of a South African company like ESCOM?
Sorry?
They are playing a key role.
Yes, yes, that's correct.
But South Africa itself has a deficit now. So we're trying to see. And in fact, there's a major plan to build another big hydro
on the same approach?
Lake Kariba, between Zimbabwe and Zambia, the Batoka hydroelectric scheme, which has been on the pipeline for some. But now I think it is going to be, actually, it's going to be one of the largest. Then Zambia is also building another one on the Kafue River, which is also, which has attracted foreign investment. Tata is one of the groups involved. So there are a number of projects which are bound to come on stream now from 2015, and that may completely change our energy production capacity. Yes, there's a question.
No, sorry, just a continuation to the discussion. Now, the professor said the level of urbanization is very high. So, and with now we are saying there is no much deficit in the electricity. So, what is the electricity access for the population?
I think that's the figure I indicated to you. If you consider the whole 13 million, only 22% have access to electricity. The rest, they use the other energy I talked about, wood, which is either direct wood or charcoal.
And in the urban areas, it's mostly charcoal.
Right.
So the demographic distribution is scattered around all this distance.
Yes, that's right.
This is what makes the off-grid much more than the national grid connection.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Even though most of the population now, because the whole of this part, this is where you have towns. So the population concentration is along the line of rail, this part here. In the rest of the country, the population is very sparse.
Yeah, so this belt of population is like 80% of the population in this
Not
belt?
80, about 45%.
So we have almost half of the population in rural areas.
That's right.
Yeah. But it's very scattered.
In fact, this scattering is the one which answers his question about why he was wondering why, with all those rivers, why didn't we develop a hydro potential? It's because of the scattered populations around here. Because if you build a power station here and people are scattered, just the investment of distributing it to houses is so heavy. So private enterprise is not interested in that because it's a high cost. So it's only government who can fund projects like that. So if you're not getting a return on this, but let's provide this service to this population. But in these areas here, it's easier because then there's a potential economic return for private enterprise.
You mentioned the pipeline between Zambia to Dar es Salaam. So I want to know more detailed ideas about this. So what kind of resources is transmitted between this pipeline, and how do they transmit?
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. My colleagues I come from electrical engineering department. In the same school, there's also another department called mechanical engineering. They're the ones who deal with the thermal resources. But this is what they talk about. The ship comes from the Middle East. Normally it was from Oman. That's where the contract is, and it docks at Dar es Salaam here. So there's a fuel tanker, a huge fuel, so a fuel tank. So it offloads the fuel into a huge tanks. There are about 3 of them there. Then it's pumped. It's pumped from here through this part here. Tanzania doesn't get anything because direct. So we just use it as a place to pass through there because we're landlocked. Then the terminal is at Ndola. So once it reaches Ndola, it's taken out back into other tanks. Now I indicated to you that it's not what's known as normal crude. It's actually petroleum. Yeah, it's already been processed into petrol, diesel, kerosene, and jet fuel. then you just mix it so that can be transmitted. So the refinery that we have here is just to break them into a part. So this is why we cannot buy crude oil from any others, because in Angola here, our neighbor here, now there's a lot of oil. So we are not able to get that oil because we can't process it. This refinery can't process it. We just buy already processed, so we just separate them here.
So in essence, you don't have a real refinery.
No, it's not a real refinery, yes.
And
It's just a separate.
And an additional point is that we were forced to construct such an expensive pipeline because our sources of fuel for the south were blocked. You know, from 1965, remember there was a unilateral declaration of independence in Zimbabwe. And then you understand the politics that were there in South Africa. So that route was simply cut, and therefore we had to find alternative routes through which to get our oil. And in fact, for some time after 1965, Zambia's oil imports came by air. The United States of America and the British government provided some support. Aircraft was bringing in fuel till the Zambia-Tanzania, the Great North Road, which you see here in red, was improved until the pipeline was built. So it was a response to the economic sanctions against we were forced, we had no choice, being landlocked. Yeah. So you can understand the politics of a landlocked country.
Tanzan Railway is still in operation.
Yes. Yeah, the Tanzan Railway, it came later in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
It was also, of course, because the rail line was blocked here, and the rail line for Angola was blocked. So again, we found ourselves in a crisis. How do we transport our copper and import and bring in imports?
Okay, any questions?
Can I ask another question? It's a little bit general question, but it is in my mind since 2005. When I went to Tanzania, there was literally mountains of fruits going bad at the end of every season. And the professor was saying that the country is very good for agriculture in almost everything, and the weather is very good. So what are the main impediments factors to prevent infrastructure investment in agricultural sectors? Because if it was only financial issues, private companies easily can get the break-evens very fast, and now we see a lot of Chinese companies invest even in Brazil, in Ecuador, in agriculture. So what are the main impeding factors to prevent this?
Yes, you take that later on, but I just want to just clarify your picture. You will be in a better position to answer this. The situation found in Tanzania is very similar also in Zambia. There's this region here, northwestern. They grow a lot of pineapples. You know what pineapples are? Yes, you eat them away. The same way you found those fruits rotting, there are also rots there. A lot of them are grown. So that's a picture we have as well there. So it's a question I'm going to ask is, why don't we?
You know, there are many factors. This is what I can tell you. There are many factors. Number one, most of these places are far off from the urban centers, the major urban centers. So transportation is number one issue. And also transportation cost is very high in Africa. Then another issue actually is that most of African agriculture is rain-fed, which means it depends on the natural conditions. So it means that most of the farmers will follow the same pattern. They will grow the crops at the same time because they are following the weather cycle. So they start growing at the same time, which is normal. I think even in Japan, farmers start growing rice at a certain time. But in this case, the problem is that the crops will be ready at the same time, but they are so far away from the markets. And also the crops actually once harvested, they can't last for a very long time. Right. Like rice, you can keep rice very easily once it's dry. But fruits, either you sell it, and if you fail to sell it, you consume some, the rest will have to go back to the soil.
I understand this, but we can make processing plants, and also the transportation can be solved easily, because for companies, once the road is constructed, the initial cost is just only once, and it can be distributed around 20 years. So I don't see that the initial cost for companies is a very huge impeding factor, because it is a problem, but it's manageable, I believe.
I think another contributing factor, for example, for Zambia, as it was the nationalization, because what the government did, as he has pointed out, is that this part of Zambia grows a lot of pineapples. This part of Zambia grows a lot of cashew nuts. But when the economy was nationalized, government set up processing plants, because processing is the key aspect of it. You need to process these agricultural crops into something that can be sold. But those government interventions, which came under an attempt to create industries in rural areas, were failed because of political influence. And as long as everything was under government, no private investor could move in. Now with the change, there has been talk that those industries may be revived under private enterprise. And one hopes that that is going to work. Right now there is an attempt to establish what is going to be probably one of the biggest palm oil plantations in Africa, in this part of Zambia. And it is private, interest driven. And I believe that that may succeed. So the potential is there. Our fruits continue to rot because of largely lack of processing capacity. I mean, the fruits you're talking about maybe are mangoes. Because we find mangoes everywhere in Tanzania, we find mangoes everywhere in Zambia. When they arrive, they're all taken to the market.
Yes.
But you can only eat so many. Why can't they be processed into mango juice, for example? That's the issue.
Exactly, and also, for example, going to the coffee, even if it is remote areas and even if it doesn't grow fast, but still you need to solve this problem of connection, which reverts back to what I said, that once you construct the road, the cost will be distributed over the coming 20 years.
Infrastructure also. Because when you look at this country, apart from what you see in yellow, all the other parts are hardly inaccessible. But this is where now, for Zambia, government is constructing roads all across the entire country, and one hopes that in the next 5 years, the problems that we're talking about.
That's actually a priority in terms of infrastructure, building roads and power plants in Africa. And that's what African Development Bank is doing. And also that's going to increase information that will go to investors. And basically that's what it will actually make investments being directed in processing.
To increase more.
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually time, but we have one question. It's okay? Okay.
I'm very sure.
Last question.
Sorry, I'm very curious about the shape of the border and especially having the copper in that area.
It's an historical, a colonial legacy. Because what happened here is that the British moved in from the east and the south. The Germans moved into Southwest Africa. The Belgians were in the Congo. And therefore, in the 1890s, all these different interests began to rush in to see who could grab the larger chunk of Zambia. And the copper belt actually is across the two countries. Even here, you have all the copper mines in Congo and you have the copper mines here. So the Belgians were trying to grab in as much land as they can. The British were also trying to grab in as much land. The result was this funny shape. In fact, to go from this part to the other part, you have to pass into another territory, and that creates a lot of problems for us. So it's a colonial legacy, an imperial legacy, really. It was not designed by nature.
Yeah, actually, in Africa, I mean, like even in Kenya, you find same group being in two countries. Yeah. They are sort of, the border is there, and the other side lives, this way, and it's not only at one point. There are so many points. For example, just a few years ago, we had our vice president. That's vice president of Kenya, and his brother is in Uganda, also a minister in the government there. So you can imagine, from same family, but they are in different countries.
And this is the colonial legacy.
Yes.
So, one final point, as we discuss this, and because of time, my colleague was not able to go into it, is in contrast to, because right now we're in Japan here, everyone is speaking Japanese. And you go to Germany, and everyone will be speaking Japanese. Oh, sorry, speaking to Germany. However, when you come here, it's a small country. Well, we think it's a small country. But we think there are 73 languages.
7 major ones.
7 major ones.
Rest,
yeah. So these people here, they speak very different from the people here, from the people there. Completely different, not dialects. I'm not talking about just completely different language. So we don't understand each other. And at the level, because we have come from Zambia, the language which he is going to speak, I don't understand it. And he may not understand it as well. So that's why when we're together, you still find that we're using English between the two of them, between the two of us. And that's kind of the
Sorry, do you have native language?
Sorry?
A native language.
Yes. 70 languages and dialects, 73.
Yes. That's what I'm getting here. He has a different native language from mine. So that's why when we are alone, you don't see us speaking our native language because we won't understand each other. So,
So when the two different people from different areas came to meet together,
they use English. English becomes the national official language to facilitate. But there are major languages, like we all grew on the Copper Belt, so we speak the language of the Copper Belt, which is spoken in a large part of the country.
Maybe you could say something quickly on the universal Zambia.
All right.
Sorry, I have one question about political system. What about political system in your country, and what's government say, for example, in parliament, maybe in English?
Yeah, it's in English.
In English.
That's the official language.
All of the news in English.
Everyone. You have to be in parliament. You must be able to speak English.
Okay. And so the second question about: do you have some national program for hydroelectric power in your country?
Yeah, we have many. These are the ones that you talked about.
Yeah.
Currently, one is under construction. A big one. There's another one which is about to start being constructed. Yeah, we have a lot of programs because we have a deficit involved electricity generation which the government wants to meet. They're trying to attract private investment in the sector, which was never there, and one hopes that it's going to work out.
Are you attracted to donors, or maybe international organizations?
Yeah, the World Bank is involved. The private sector is involved. Remember, I mentioned Tata, which is an Indian multinational corporation involved in it. Yeah. Well, the World Bank is involved.
Okay. So finally, some information about the University of Zambia.
Right. Okay, I will take less than 5 minutes just a quick introduction to this. We'll talk about the University of Zambia. So, okay, I'm going to do the introduction. Sorry, I'm going to do the presentation, but we gather this information together with my colleague. So, this guy just 3 things, just background history, then I'll talk about the administrative structure of the university. Then I'll just talk about some issues which are facing up to this point. Then I'll show you some few pictures. I have a lot of pictures that I just selected. If you, I was anticipating that probably time was going to be it. So can I just have go to the next one? We got independence in 1964, and the university was established in 1965. And when it was established, there were only 3 schools. The one dealing with education, the one dealing with the HS, where he comes from.
Management science.
Management science, and then the other one dealing with the natural sciences. So it was a very small university. At that time, there were only, in the whole university, there were only 312 students. But now, at the moment, it's more than 7,000. 7,000 are the ones who are like full-time. Then we have an additional 5,000 who are by correspondence. So in total, it comes about 12,000. In relative terms, it's small, but in Zambia, it's the biggest university. I know here, Professor was telling me that there's a university. He was also telling me that the university with 100,000 students. So we are saying, oh, wow. So how it's a, University of Zambia is a public institution. I know here there is a combination of public and private, but University of Zambia is a public institution, and curious enough, the people who built that was not actually just government money, but ordinary people who were making contributions around this time, making contributions, whatever they could. Sometimes in kind. Bag of chicken, make a donation of chicken and so on, just let's build a university for the country just after independence. So that's the legacy of what the University of Zambia has. And when it was built, this man, this name here, some of you might be familiar with, he was strongly associated with the university, and he became the first chancellor. Although the chancellor doesn't do the administration, but he was the figurehead for the university at that time. So I can just move on there. In terms of running the university, this is a basic structure. So because it's a public institution, so it's controlled by, it was established by an act of parliament. So there were 2 acts. The first one was the one in 1965, but it was revised in 1999, which is the way it's done to allow for private universities. And the way it's governed is by what is known, it's a board, like a board of a company. But they give it a special name, they call it University Council. So it's about 12 members or so who are selected to do the policy running of the university. But in terms of management, there's a vice chancellor, that's the topmost person, who has the deputy. And for the administration, it is assisted by the registrar, who has 3 deputy registrars. To run the academic programs, we have deans, and I think it's a term which is used for the university, because when I came to this meeting, I think we came from the dean of your school. Yeah, so we just met him. But it's the same way as well. There we have deans. Then we have departments, which like electrical engineering department. I'm the one heading the electrical engineering department. So there are several of these depending on what discipline it is in the school. Other than that, there are just other administrators as well. So I've removed out the smaller details of that, but just to give you the structure of this. At present, there are now 9 schools. As far as I know, that's the list there. When you have time, you can have a look at what they are. The interest, the way we have come here, is coming from the first school, Humanities and Social Sciences, and coming from this school here, where there are 5 departments. These ones is one of the, in terms of the number of departments, they have the highest number of departments. But in terms of number of students, this is the school. It has the highest number of students they want to do with education. Okay, and the smallest is the veterinary medicine, which incidentally has very strong links with Japan. So there are a lot of Japanese staff coming to work here, and there are also a lot of Zambians coming to be trained here in Japan.
Hokkaido University.
They've trained everyone who is teaching in the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, then there are also, these institutes and directors, they are the same level as schools, but they help with the running of the other parts of the university. like the one to do with the research and graduate studies. In fact, since all of you are graduate studies here, on the common things, these are the ones we'll be dealing with. This is the director which will be dealing with you. Then there's the one dealing with the correspondence students, and then there's the one dealing with research in economics and social sciences, and then there's the one to do with computer and communications, supporting the computer, including infrastructure, and finally, of course, the one to do with the library. I think, in brief, that's what it is. But currently, what we think are the current challenges, starting from 1965, when it was first established. It's been one of the most prestigious institutions, not just in Zambia, but in Africa until around the 70s. Because everyone would have wanted, from all over Africa, would have wanted to come and study at the University of Zambia. Even its ranking was very high, but because of lack of funding for the infrastructure, especially for science schools, engineering schools, our equipment has not been adhered, hasn't kept pace with that. That was the electric decline. So there's challenges to do with the funding, including the government, because the government is not allocating enough resources to that. So it's the problem we face in there. The other thing we're seeing is that, because University of Zambia was the first one, then up to 1991, let me say up to 2010, about 2 years ago, there became now 2 other public institutions. So we now have 3 public institutions. So now
it's only the 5 or 6.
Yeah. So
the others are almost nearly complete.
So now we're seeing resources from the government, from the sample, now being divided between us. So it changes the picture on the way we're going to do our relationship, because we have to compete with that. But in terms of getting students, there's even more pressure, because the new University Act allows for private universities, and now many of them have come around. And they are specializing in certain areas where students are happy to do like business and so on. And so there's a lot of competition to do with that. So again, it's forcing the University of Zambia to reposition itself in this new era. And then lastly, which this I think is a good thing, because there's now new legislation which is coming just this year. Instead of the Invest Act, now we regulated by what is known as the Higher Education Act, or to have a charter on how the relationship is going to be, or the standard of university education is going to be being controlled by this. And I think because of this, we think is a good thing, because not every private institution now, not everyone can aspire to say that I'll build it right now. You can just come and say, oh, with one room and say, I'll set up the university. But this one has certain specifications on what we constitute to be university, and I think that's then probably our status is going to be restored under this. So in the nutshell, that's how it looks like for the way the university is. I have a lot of these pictures, but I've just picked a few just to give you an idea of when you are entering. This is how you see the poster to do with the University of Zambia on the Great East Road campus. There are 2 campuses. One with all the schools, then the school to do with with medicine is on a different place, about 4 or 3 kilometers away from there. Okay, that's the road which is into the university, and this is part of the thing you could see here, showing the old university as it was built in 1965 up to 1970s. That's part of it there.
The School of Education.
That's the School of Education. It's housing the School of Education and the School of Law in the same building here. Part of student hostel. It's part of the student hostel. So where the students stay also on
we have the sun things that hang on the windows.
Right.
Or the library.
Okay. So
entrance.
Yes, that's the way to the library. That building there will be the library.
There's an interesting history. As you can see, it was never completed, because it was being built by an Israeli company. And then in 1973, remember there was the Arab Israeli. Our president thought that we should support the Arab cause. And the Israelis pulled out. They left it uncompleted. And I think it has remained in that state. So we use it as it is, but I think at the time it was built, it was one of the biggest libraries in the universe. That it's 14 decks.
Right.
It's like the SOAS library. I've been to SOAS in London. No, it has 14 decks. This is
that's a part of the School of Natural Sciences. This is the biology building.
the biology building.
Right.
Okay, this is the School of Engineering.
That's why I
Part of it
yes,
was
there's another building, an annex there. That's where I come from there. So this is the
one of the lecture theaters
in the School of Engineering. That's where I give talks to my classes. So my students will be sitting in here.
These students sitting for an exam.
Again, these are part of my students in one of the rooms. This is an examination going on. This was taken 4 days ago when the examination. They just finished the examinations. Okay, and that's where his school is.
This is natural sciences.
Right. So part of it is natural
chemistry,
sciences.
physics,
That's right.
mathematics, geography,
Right.
and these are the photos.
These are the few photos we have.
You can see the emblems of Doshisha and
That's right. That's right. So yeah. It's a cooperation we want to have now. So as you can see, that's the emblem. That's how we identify University of Zambia. And we found out that that's how we identify Doshisha in this. So all this cooperation will get stronger and stronger. Thanks very much.
Thank you. The university atmosphere, we share something in common. In any university, something in common. Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I think in the future, yes, as I said, some students will come from Zambia University to Doshisha, and based on the MOU, we may send students, the best and brightest students of Zambia University. So today, this seminar is just the start of it's more to come. Okay, thank you very much.
And I think the pleasure is ours to come and meet and talk to our students at Doshisha. I met Professor Mina in Africa, and he came to Zambia. So this is a continuation of avenues of collaboration. Because Africa has remained touched from Asia. We didn't much because linked to Europe. But this is a good start. And I hope from what we've said today, that you will leave behind, some of you can find time to come to Zambia. And when you want to come to Zambia, whether for research or whatever, get in touch. The visa issue can be facilitated. Zambia is very easy to get into. It's unfortunate that you were 10 pounds.
He is not a president, but the king of Zambia.
So it's been a pleasure.
If any Zambian students will come, we will welcome them, don't worry.
Thank you.
And we will be glad to make some projects there regarding renewable off-grid or something. It will be very interesting.
We will visit Kyotanabe and to see Yamitani Sensei tomorrow. Thank you very much.